Okay, I'm going to show you the stuff you will need to make yourself a longboard. You're going to need PVA to stick all the sheets of ply together. I got 5 litres of PVA. You use about half a litre of PVA to make 3 or 4 layer deck. Okay, this is a hardwood ply 8x4 sheet. You can see I've already cut my deck out. This is just what's left over, but make sure you check the grain direction. On smaller sheets the grain actually runs across the board, not along the length. So that's the ply. I actually used a hardwood ply, but you can use softwood, hardwood, whatever you want. Just make sure you check the grain direction. You need a tape and a pencil, jigsaw, cutting your pattern out, cutting it out the sheet. Always put a fresh blade in it because it will splinter a lot less with a fresh blade and make a lot neater job. Use a palm sander if you've got one, they're very handy. I tend to do mine by hand with a little sanding block, various size grades of sanding paper. If you're going to do it by hand, make sure you use a little wooden block because it'll get a nice smooth flat finish. Don't be tempted just to use your fingers because you'll get 2 little pressure points where your fingers are. Chisels, just a selection of chisels for cleaning off the PVA after the deck's dry. Wet cloths, always try and have 2 wet cloths at least, and maybe a couple of dry ones. Just a scrap bit of timber for spreading the glue out, and obviously something to put your glue in. I tend to thin my PVA with about 10% water just to make it a little bit easier to spread. PVA, I bought 5 litres from a builder's merchants. You need about half a litre to make a 4-ply 4-foot deck, but it's a lot cheaper to buy in bulk. It cost me 10 quid for 5 litres, and I just use a scabby old scrubbing brush for cleaning up, as you see later in the vid. Clamps, you can never ever have enough clamps. These are good because you can use them one-handed while you're holding the deck in place. I use a selection of clamps, G-clamps, adjustable clamps. These are very big, strong, powerful clamps, and they're the main ones that I use for clamping the 6x4 down to form the concave on the deck. They're also adjustable, so very, very handy. Use a sash clamp if you've got one. If you haven't, don't worry, it's not essential. I didn't use one to make this deck. You want some scrap pieces of wood just to put underneath your clamps so that they don't mark your deck when you're clamping it down. And then last but no means least, you'll need a big piece of 6x4 heavy duty solid piece of timber to form the concave, and I just put that down on top of the deck and clamp it down tight. What about the jig? Okay, so I'm going to tell you all about the jig. This is the template that I've used. I'll tell you all about the template in a minute. Now, the jig is just so simple to make. It's just a piece of cake. It'll take you about 10 minutes. It's a 15mm block board, and I've just screwed a couple of bits either side and a piece at the back so that I can form the concave and form the tail. The dimensions are, it's a foot wide, 300mm by 1.5 metres or 60 inches. This allows me to make decks anywhere from 30 inches up to 60 inches, and I don't really have to move the pieces of wood much. The rails on the side actually are 15mm thick. This will give me about 15mm of concave in the deck. They're held in place with 3 screws. If you want a narrower deck, just move them in. If you want a wider deck, move them out. This deck's going to be 9 inches. At the tail I've got a 20mm piece of wood, purely because that's how much kick I wanted in the tail. If you want a bigger kick in your tail, use more wood. As you can see, they're just held in place with 3 screws. It's so easy to move if you want to adjust it, but as I say, if you want a bigger kick, just put more wood under your tail. These bits of wood on the side, I put a pencil mark on them so that when you put your templates on top, or your board on top, you can line it up. It's just so easy. Put a piece at the front, little mark at the front, little mark at the back. When you slide it in position, it's just so easy to get everything lined up. How much does it cost? It costs very little. This bit of wood you could buy for less than a £5. The rails on the side, £1.79, and then you just need a big solid piece of timber to put on the top just to form the concave. You can see how the concave's formed. What about the template? Right, the template This is one I got offline. I've adjusted it, I've shortened it, and believe it or not, I've shortened it. You can see it's going to be a drop 8. Wheel wells are marked in there. Just put it on top of your ply, trace it out with a pencil, cut it out with your jigsaw, put it in your jig, put your bit of board on top, clamp it in place, make sure it's in the middle, clamp it in place, and there you go, you're good to go.